Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about my book superlatives. No way to say that word exciting, but I'm in my reading chair, so I'm excited to have a comfy place to sit. So I have it organized in the category of best, disappointing, or I hoped it would be better, and then the worst. I had a decent reading year. I think that December, November is where I read the best books. I also think that my taste of reading changed. I went into this year thinking that my favorite genre was like horror and mystery, and that definitely changed this year, or I just had a better time and I enjoyed reading more nonfiction this year. So the first best book that I read this year was Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson. It's about a teenage girl named Enchanted who has a wonderful singing voice. She wants to be a singer, and she gets wrapped up with this musician named Corey Field. Kind of like the power dynamic and the struggle between that. I think he was in his late 20s, early 30s. The story kind of develops on the relationship that they had and what Enchanted feels like she has to give up in order to be famous. It also just talks about the mental struggles that she has, kind of reckoning with the idea of being famous and what that comes with. Also, predator dynamic of Corey, because he's definitely a predator. And it was 5 stars. It was really, really good. The second book that I read in the best category was Muted by Tammy Charles. It is about a girl named Denver and her 2 best friends, Dolly and Shock. And they are a singing group, and they get wrapped up with a big popular music mogul named Merk. And it's pretty similar to Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson, but I think that there are different topics that are discussed. It kind of has that same dynamic of an older man preying on younger women, but I think that it dives into different aspects of the entertainment industry. For Grown, it was very singular. It was just Enchanted and her experience and her family, but Muted had 3 girls, and so it was kind of like, you know, what it was like to walk into something as a group and to be separated, or to kind of be pinned against your friends, or when your friend wants one thing and you want something else. And I thought about this book a lot as well. It's written in verse, so it went by really fast, but it was still so detailed, and you felt like you knew all the characters really well. The next book is After the Cheering Stops by Cindy Fiesel. It was so good. I know it's not a popular book at all. I actually had to read it for one of my psychology courses when I was an undergrad, about being the wife of an NFL player and how her husband and her life changed as he began to suffer the side effects of a traumatic brain injury that he suffered while he was playing in the NFL. Her husband his position that he played in football meant that he endured a lot of trauma on the top of his head and his neck. And as he got older, into middle age, like his 30s and his 40s, it really began to affect him, his speech, addiction, and the way that he spoke to his family. He was like a completely different person from being in college to being in his late age, and passing away early at like 48 or something. And she described it, I felt like she gave her husband dignity, but also just the way she spoke about how it affected her and who she was, and the way it changed her marriage, and just how he was just such a different person. It was so good. I thought about it for so long. I still think about it to this day. I would definitely read it. The next book is Yes, Daddy by Jonathan Parks Ramage. It is about a young man named Jonah and him getting wrapped up with a much older playwright named Richard. It was definitely one of those kind of power dynamics, and the writing was just so, it was so there. I mean, you really just felt like you were just reading, like you just felt like you were there. There were so many parts in the book where I just felt like this is bad, like this is not good, this relationship is not good. It really made me feel feelings. And it also talks about religious abuse in the church, which is not something that, looking at the title and looking at the synopsis, you would ever think. But it talked about the main character and just the way that he suffered in the church for being gay. And it kind of opened your eyes to what he went through and what other people may have went through in their church for their sexuality. It was so good. I would definitely recommend reading it. Yeah, next book that I have is PostGrad, 5 Women in Their First Year Out of College by Carolyn Kitchener. And it follows Carolyn and 5 other women and their first year out of college. They graduated from Harvard. It was an Ivy League school, and it follows all of their journeys, their relationships with their parents, and just what are they deciding to do. There are, some of the girls have a lot of finance, they're very wealthy, and some of them are trying to go to medical school, some of them are trying to balance between relationship. All of them are very intelligent in their own right, but they're kind of starting to realize that what can they do with that intelligence and what can they make their lives to be with that intelligence. I thought about it a lot because I, in postgrad, feelings of not, you're not sure what to do with your time, and you don't know what you want to plan, and you're not sure what the next 5 years of your life looks like. I related to that, and so I thought about it a lot. I only gave it 4 stars because one of the women by the end of the project wasn't available to speak anymore, and I felt like the author tried to fill in the blanks of what she thought that the other woman thought, and I felt like, we don't know what she thought because she wasn't there. So I gave it 4 stars because of that, but it was very good. The next couple of books are literally books that I've all read in December. So December was the best reading month for me. I think it's just because I really tapped into my nonfiction, memoir, which I think is one of my favorite genres by far. It was In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado, and it is about Carmen and her relationship with an abusive partner for, I'm not actually sure of the time span, but I'm assuming at least a year, and just kind of how it affected her and her family, her friendships, how she met the person, how she broke it off with that person, and just kind of seeing how things turned from, good to bad. And I felt like just some of the things that were said to her by her partner were so subtle that you might not even, it's so easy to miss, when you are in an abusive relationship. And it really kind of just gets the ball rolling, as far as, the abuse dynamic. I also think that when we hear about relationships, we always hear about pay attention to the red flags, and you should have known better, but some of it is so subtle, and it just really, I think it's a must read. This book is The Secret Lives of Church Ladies by Disha Filia. I always feel like I'm mispronouncing her name. So good. My biggest regret with this book is that I've had it for over a year and I just picked it up. It was a collection of essays written about women who attend church, and that is the biggest connector of these women because it just dives into their lives and their sexuality and their past and their futures and what they think and their dynamics, and it was so good. Literally, it was excellent. I just think it's so worth the read. I think that it is really good. I'm horrible at describing books. Next is Letter to a Young Female Physician by Suzanne Coven. This is a memoir about Suzanne as she is reflecting on her career in medicine. She speaks about how she decided to go into medicine since she studied English in undergrad, her process of taking science classes in order to apply to medical school, and just really speaking about the way that she was treated in every step of the process as a woman going into the field. Accused of cheating because her assignments were so good, made to feel like she had to be nurturing and motherly, even if she was, but you know, because being a woman, being made to feel like she had to be a certain way. As she got older in her practice and matured, what did that mean? How did she interact with her patients, and what boundaries did she want to keep and did she want to change? And also kind of her reflecting on the boundaries that her male co-workers, right? The boundaries that they kept with their patients and the way that she felt like she was expected to have with hers. And I thought it was so good. I think that it was really interesting to read coming from someone who doesn't have like a medical background or like a healthcare background. The last book in the best category is actually the last book that I read this year, is My Body by Emily Ratajkowski. It was very good. I know that the book has a lot of differing opinions on Goodreads and reviews, and I know that some people will not appreciate it, and I know that I saw a lot of people thought that the book was pretentious and it seemed like Emily was victimizing herself, but I genuinely didn't get that from her book. I think that she was speaking on her experiences of being an attractive woman and how as a young woman and as a young model she did leverage that. And I also think that she very clearly, you know, understood that she was utilizing her body and her looks in order to survive and to make money, but there was a lot of growth that I heard, and her experiences are valid no matter what. And I think that it was just very open and candid. It was very, very good. Next categories, which is disappointing and then just I didn't like. I don't have that many. I feel like I didn't read too many books that I didn't like. I try to pick up books that I think that I will like, but sometimes it just doesn't happen. The book that I was disappointed by is The Minders by John Mars. I really like John Mars as an author. He's my favorite like thriller, psychological thriller author. He wrote The One, What Lies Between Us, lots of very good books. And something about John Mars, his books have been following a lot of characters. I think that at minimum they follow at least 6, but definitely upwards to 8, and he does it well. He follows a lot of characters well. This book was about 8 characters who were at any stage of their life. They could have been depressed, they could have been parents, I mean just had any stage of their life, like random people, and they had implantations of very sensitive information to the United Kingdom, and they had to be protected because they had sensitive information, and they were like placed in like different countries, different places, had to like completely restart their life, and I just thought it wasn't that good. I don't know, it wasn't that good. And so really the story is how did these 8 people navigate with the rules that they were given. It might have not even been 8 characters. I really can only remember like 3 or 4, but the rules were that they really couldn't make a lot of friends, they couldn't give that much of themselves away, can't have kids, or they shouldn't have kids, and they can't have a romantic partner, so they can't really have a full life. And like they were navigating that. It wasn't it for me. It was disappointing because John Mars is one of my favorite authors, and so I was looking forward to it, but didn't get a blanket because I'm like shivering, freezing cold over here. This book is The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. It is about a single mom named Jess, and she works in the science industry. I can't remember exactly what she did, but she is brought together by like this dating app. It's like this DNA dating app that is being developed by River, who is like, I don't know, they like know each other. They go to the same like coffee house, but they like don't really know each other. They're like, she's like attracted to him, but like she thinks she thinks he's mean, and so they ended up matching on the dating app, and the chemistry, it was like not there. The thing with this book is that I wanted more. I feel like it could have been a series. I remember it being a little bit longer than Christina Lauren's other books. I think with this is they spent a lot of time building up the app so that way the reader could kind of understand it, but there wasn't a lot of chemistry, and we kind of missed out on that. Like towards the end, I kind of felt like we were like, okay, so why do we want them together? So yeah, but it wasn't bad. I liked it. I just felt like I wanted to know more about the two of them together. Okay, now I'm in the worst category. By worst, I just mean that I struggled to get through it. I really had a hard time. Starting off is Tornado Weather by Deborah E. Kennedy. It is about the abduction of a 5-year-old girl who was kidnapped from her bus stop just by someone random. She was supposed to be picked up by someone else, and someone else like completely random came and got her, and then she went missing. And it just follows the perspectives of many different people in the town. The book hits on a lot of different points as far as gentrification, the way that the town is changing, the different industries, like undercover investigations and things like that. It was not bad, it was just extremely slow, and I think that there was some like point of views that weren't necessary, and it was just, I was like really trying to get to the end of it. And then I think like the ending was like, I just was like, okay, I don't know, it was not very good to me. The next book I have is My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. I spoke about this in my December wrap up. It was just, I got bored. I will say I got bored. And I started to become bored when the action was really popping off. I think that it's definitely a slow burn, and it is a build-up, and if you like that, then I think that you would really enjoy it. So I would say that it's definitely more than a horror and a thriller book. It has a lot of different themes in it that I thought were really interesting, but when it got to the point for it to like be the thriller, I was bored of it, and I was like really struggling to get through it. This book, and like the worst book that I read this year, is You're Not Enough and That's Okay by Allie Beth Stuckey. And this is a faith-based book that is trying to kind of combat the self-love culture. I saw this in the Amazon bookstore probably almost a year ago, maybe in like March or February of 2021, and I didn't pick it up, but I was able to access it on Scribd and listen to it, and I actually DNF'd it. The premise is that you don't have to rely on self-love all the time, and you don't have to try and be perfect all the time. I understand that, and I think that that is helpful. I think that everything needs a balance, but I think the message was lost, or I felt like the synopsis it wasn't what the book was about. Like it was like, oh, you don't have to be perfect all the time, but it was not, it was like just homophobic, first of all. That was really what stood out to me. The book is very short, it may be 150 pages. I got to about page 50 and literally the only message that, like, anything that was of value was completely undermined by homophobia. So it's like just bad. It wasn't good. Reviews are very divided because there are people who don't agree with other people's sexuality, and there's people who don't care. Like, it literally doesn't matter. Somebody else's sexuality has no effect on you whatsoever. So I didn't like it because I felt like it wasn't what I picked the book up for. I would have never read something like that if I knew that was what it was going to be about. So it was a DNF for me, and that was the worst book that I read this year. I think that overall I had a pretty good reading year. I think that for my goals for next year, my goal this year was to read 50 books. I read 51. I think that next year I want to like free read. Like, I don't want to keep track of a number of books. Like, I'll keep track of the books that I read, but I don't want to have like a goal. Like, I don't think that I'm gonna say, oh, I want to read 50 books again or something like that. Like, I just want to read, and then at the end of 2022, however many books I read is just what I read. So yeah, and I think that I definitely want to read a lot more nonfiction next year, more essay collections. I really enjoy hearing, like, learning about other people's lives and like other people's lessons and things like that. So yeah, so much for watching. I hope you have a great New Year's.